there's the disappearing music bed again. Hello, it's Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Brian Perez here, and we are here till 4 p.m. Pacific time today to talk to you guys about whatever is on your mind. So give us a call at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. Hello to all of you listening on the radio as well as watching on Facebook and YouTube. You see the number there on the bottom of the screen, 888-564-6173. Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective is a great way, not the best way, though, to send us your questions using the messenger feature. We prefer to hear the sound of your voice, so give us a call at 888-564-6173. And if you're on the Bobby Conway 1 Minute Apologist YouTube channel, Bobby just ran out of the room. Man, that was like, whoa. Never seen him run so fast. But
he went to turn on YouTube.
I guess, yeah, that's it. That's what I forgot to do. Well, okay, so those of you on YouTube will be joining us shortly when Bobby flips the switch there.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah. Just
what's that? Maybe
empty chair,
like,
empty mic.
you know, Bobby's kind of, he's kind of been wrestling with a rapture. I think maybe, well, no, he's back. It wasn't the rapture after all. Bobby, we thought that it was definitely pre-trib, that you got just caught up suddenly as you were meditating on.
Yes. No, you know what happened is my in-laws just showed up and they brought their dog, and I hate when the dog comes over because it triggers my dog. So I was just having to go and say, look, we're live on the radio right now. Deal with the dogs, basically, was what I had to say. I had to bark at the barkers.
Yeah. Well, good. That was good. I was on an international Zoom call today, and there was a dog that kept running through the room. So I know exactly how I feel about that.
It's terrible how when that happens.
And it wasn't through my room. It wasn't my dog running around.
Of course not.
No.
Barnabas is a good dog.
He doesn't do any of those naughty dog things.
That's right. So 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We've got Bobby Conway and Brian Brodersen here. Brian's normally not here on Wednesdays, but with the high price of gasoline, Brian decided to work an extra day today to earn enough money to
fill up his tank.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And to give John Huang a little more honeymoon time.
Yes.
He's got a honeymoon COVID date with his wife. They've been on for about a week.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much over it, but probably needed a little more of a break.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yep. So I thought,
How much is gas out in California?
Don't ask.
I've been seeing 6.55, 7 on the news.
It's around
right?
6, yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen
6.
places
I
at
filled
6.
up the other day. It was $5.99, so
Yeah.
it was about as close to 6 as you can get. And, with Biden cutting off the Russian oil supply, that maybe, I heard somewhere that there was only about 10% of our oil supply that came through Russia. So these guys, they might just jack the price up and say, oh, well, we can't do anything about it because we no longer have the Russian supply. But
maybe
we'll
opening
see.
that Keystone pipeline would help.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know all the logistics behind that.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
What about Bobby, North Carolina? How much are you paying?
I haven't had to fill my tank up in a little bit, but I'm guessing it's probably about $4.50, a lot better than what you guys are experiencing. Yeah. I did read something today that, that maybe we could be hopeful. I have no idea. This is not my field. I was just listening to the news, and it was talking about how, some of the oil prices per barrel went down today. So maybe we were already kind of capping out, and it won't get worse, but who knows? I mean, it just seems horrific, what's going on. And I just wish we could find a way to be independent on these type of issues for such a time as this. I wonder, watching the Ukrainian-Russian war, what type of issues will be thought about differently 10 years down the road, let's say, between Democrats and Republicans. Like, for example, will we see the need for having the ability to be independent on our energy, or will we see the need to make sure that we keep our military strong and robust? It'll be interesting to see the way that things go.
They'll just push for electric vehicles. They'll say we have to get on electricity, and then somebody will shut down the power grid, and then how did that go?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard a conversation today on a podcast with a congressman and another, Christian leader. And they were commenting on how this war is suddenly being a bit of a unifying factor across the country, because everybody, regardless of what side of the political aisle you land on, almost everybody's on the same page in agreement that this Russian aggression by Putin is out of bounds, wrong, shouldn't be happening. I mean, everybody's got a different opinion about how to deal with it, but I thought that was an interesting thing, to see how this is bringing some bit of healing and some unity. So.
That's great. The country is finally unified. Thank you, Vladimir Putin. No, I don't know who to think about that. But all right, 888-564-6173 is our telephone number. And let's start with a question that was sent in online. Rudy was listening to the March 3rd program. That would have been last Thursday, I believe. I think you guys were both on that program. Rudy says, I was listening to that episode today on the podcast. Why did the pastor, not sure which one of you said this, why did the pastor say everyone that's going to go to hell hates God? What about the Catholic that loves God but doesn't accept Christ? Does he hate God because he winds up in hell? That doesn't make sense. Everybody that goes to hell doesn't go to hell because they hate God. Why would you say that? Who said that? Bobby, was that you? Brian? Do you remember?
I don't remember any of us saying it, but...
I think Bobby just fessed up.
Okay, but, but the Bible says, Jesus said this. He said, he that hates me hates my Father. So, you can plead all you want that you really love God, but if you're simultaneously rejecting Jesus, you don't love God. According to God, he doesn't think you love him because you're rejecting the one he loves the most, who is his son. And so Jesus said that, but there's other passages that would say basically the same thing, right, Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about people in hell, I think that the point is people aren't in hell that love the true God. So the person brings up the idea, what about the Catholic that loves God that goes to hell? Well, if we're talking about a Catholic, because anybody can profess to be a Protestant or Catholic, but if we're talking about a Catholic or a Protestant for that matter that loves Jesus, like that has placed their faith in Jesus, well, they're not going to be in hell. Mm-hmm. But if we're just talking about a person who says in name only, I'm a Protestant or I'm a Catholic, but they don't love Jesus, they've never really given their life to Christ, then maybe they love the idea of religion and church, but the relationship with God. And so when it comes to the statement like hating God, maybe it would be better to think of, we don't want to live in alignment with God. Like those who reject Jesus, ultimately, they don't want to live for Jesus on earth. They don't want to stand apart for him. They don't want to buy into what the Bible has to say. They don't want to give up their immorality. And so when we're saying people in hell, hating God, nobody's going to be in hell that loves God. Now, there'll be people that had an idea of God that they thought that they loved, but it wasn't the Christian God. And their idea of the God that they might have loved could be a God that, it could be just a God that doesn't care about how we live, is not going to bring any judgment into our life. Who knows what kind of a version that somebody might think up. But the person mentioned that it's kind of strange. It would be strange to picture people in hell loving God. If they love God, they wouldn't be there.
All right, Rudy, thanks for writing to us, and thanks for listening to us on podcast. Here's another follow-up question. Maybe we ought to do a segment called Follow-Up Friday. Like you guys listen to the program Monday through Thursday, then call us with your follow-up questions on Friday. But today's not Friday, so I guess that's not going to work anyway. But Sandy sent one in. Today, a lady called in regards to some tickets she got for her son to see Hillsong. Sandy says, her son is so right. Please do your own research. Remember, Lucifer was one of the main worshipers in heaven leading worship. So if anyone knows anything about music, even the devil does.
Yeah.
And he can trick people through music. I've seen a lot of stuff and read a lot of stuff and did my own research. And Hillsong is not worshiping our true God, though they make it sound like they are. The devil's leading them the wrong way.
Wow.
Brian. Yes. And there's a lot more. That was the edited version.
Right. Well, yeah, it's interesting that the devil was absolutely, without any question, Bible says it all over the place, he was the worship leader in heaven. Yeah.
Let's talk about that because, that's always
I've yet to read that anywhere in Scripture. I mean, it is a theory, and it's a theory based on a statement in Ezekiel 28. And it speaks of it's describing this being who starts out to be the king of Tyre, but I think truly does transition to addressing the spiritual power behind the king of Tyre, who I think in this case would be the one we call the devil. And it refers to the creation of his pipes and timbrels. And so that implies some musical sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. But to jump from that to basically he was the choir director or the worship leader, it's a bit of a stretch, to say the least.
And it is one of those things that has been taught for so long in the church that I think people are...
Yeah, well, when Satan got cast out of heaven, he landed in the choir loft. Mm-hmm. And that's why... most church problems began with the choir. Mm-hmm. And so that was how that theology developed.
Is that why we don't have a choir here? No, I'm joking.
Well, we did have one, but we had to exercise it.
Bobby, any thoughts?
No.
No.
I just laugh at what Brian has to share there.
Well, I'm sorry for the young lady that wrote us. I think maybe her research isn't quite well. We don't agree with her research. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of research out there, right? Yeah. So I think Hillsong's doing a good job musically. I think they're extraordinary. I think they've given some great music to the church. I do think they're worshiping the true God. And so I guess we just have a difference of opinion with a listener.
Yep. It happens, believe it or not. 888-564-6173 is our number. Let's do another Facebook one. This is from Emily in California. My question is about interpreting dreams. My now former boyfriend has recently come to faith for his salvation. He was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. He doesn't believe Jesus to be God as well as man. He has recently become very active in reading and praying in the past months, which I'm excited about for him. He's had some dreams since that seem to have had similarities with events that happened soon after that he couldn't have known about. He had a few dreams that he felt had to do with me. I had been or would be dishonest in his dreams or unfaithful in the future if we were to date again. The next day he read Proverbs 5, which he had never read before. He said when he prayed for me, he kept hearing about the Canaanite woman who came to Jesus because her daughter was possessed. He thinks it's God telling him, I have something evil in me. So he broke up with me because he felt like God was telling him this. I disagree with his interpretation, but I prayed that if he was correct for the sake of argument, God would show me the same things. I know spiritual growth is a process and we all make mistakes even when we're seeking God. But what does it sound like he's going on? He feels like whenever he prays for me, he feels like God is telling him that I have some major moral defects. Brian.
Well, I would just be rejoicing that he's decided to discontinue this relationship with you, because this does not sound like the kind of guy you want to be connected to. No. I mean, this is just whatever, fanaticism, craziness, self-righteousness, who knows what the root of it is. But I would just say, this is what we sometimes call a blessed subtraction. Sometimes God takes away things, and in the long run, it's a blessing in disguise, even though maybe at first it hurts, you know. But you realize later, oh my gosh, did I ever dodge a bullet with that one? So.
All right. Emily, thanks for sending in your question on facebook.com/pastorsperspective.
Okay, give the next 3 questions to Bobby, man. I'm here. It's not even my day to be here, and I'm just doing all the work.
We're so excited to have you here on a Wednesday.
I'm doing all the heavy lifting.
Right.
Bobby's just sitting over there. I don't know what he's doing, twiddling his thumbs. What are you doing over there?
But those are good. Those are good answers. I mean, you basically said the same thing. I was going to say, well, I mean, without minimizing her feelings, you can count that a blessing. I mean, there's some delusion here, and stay away and pray for this person. So that was good advice, and I concur, bud.
Okay, Bobby, I want to give you a biblical question. I want you to give me a quick overview. I'm finishing up Jonah tonight, and I was deep in study, and then I had to get in my car and drive over here to hang out with you guys. So give me like the 2-minute overview of Jonah from the Bobby Conway Bible commentary.
The 1-minute apologist, Bobby Conway.
Okay, well, Jonah's a prophet in 8th century BC. All we know about Jonah is what we get in the book, except for just one other passage in the Old Testament, and then we have what Jesus says about him in the New Testament. It would be considered that he's a prophet, but he's a reluctant prophet. In chapter 1, we see a man on the run. In chapter 2, we see a man crying out from the pit. In chapter 3, we see Nineveh repenting. And in chapter 4, we see a pity party. I think the most amazing thing about the book of Jonah is the only thing that doesn't obey God in Jonah is the prophet Jonah. The sailors obey him. The wind obeys him. The tree, the vine, the winds, and the fish. Yeah. They all are obedient, but Jonah can't be obedient.
You skip the worm. The worm obeyed him too, right? He gnawed at the root of the tree.
Now, you know what's funny about you asking me about that, though? Lest you be, too impressed with my quick 1-minute recap.
I was going to say that's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I actually read the book of Jonah today because I'm starting a series on it this weekend. Wow. So I was like, you couldn't have asked me a question that I was more fresh on. So for anybody out there in the audience, I can't just, be on call in any book of the Bible like that at any moment. So.
Well, I taught chapters 1 and 2 last week, and so finishing up tonight. But the thing that is so fascinating about Jonah is, as you mentioned, the reluctant prophet, Jonah. The Assyrians we know were pretty vicious and ferocious, and Jonah just did not want these guys. He wanted them judged. He didn't want to risk any chance that they could be forgiven. And that was basically the motive for him running away from the call of God, because he says, I knew this was going to happen. I knew you were compassionate. Yeah. I knew you were merciful. That's why I didn't want to go on this mission. And, at the very end of the book ends so abruptly, where God just simply says, there's 120,000 people in this city that don't know their right hand from their left. And there's animals. And, basically like Jonah, do you have a heart? Where? And I think it's interesting, though, because I think sometimes, of course, we could do this personally. We can have somebody that's become an enemy, or somebody that's, injured us, or somebody that's done something to us where we don't even want to see them repent. We don't want to see them get right with God. We'd rather just see God judge them. And I think that sometimes, too, with, as a group of Christians, we can look at certain people in society and we can just say, God, just judge those people. We don't need them to repent. We just need them to perish. Mm-hmm. And so we're gonna talk about that attitude tonight.
Well, that's good. I think that it's neat to hear that you're doing that. It's true. I mean, a lot of people would have a hard time praying for like a Putin to get saved, right?
Yeah.
Like as they would for the Assyrian king to repent.
Yeah.
So you mind if I share a little observation of something that I've been thinking about?
Is it about Jonah?
No. About
Okay. It might fit in anyway, and I'll steal it from you and
it might.
share it.
No.
Okay.
Well, I think you'll appreciate it. It's a little bit of moral philosophy, but I've been thinking about how our ethical theories inform our decision making and worldview. And so I just thought it would be maybe insightful for the audience to consider this. I think we've got three ethical theories at play if we take Russia, the Ukraine, and then the Western world. With Russia, you have Vladimir Putin, who has a Machiavellian ethic. And if you've ever read The Prince, that's an ethic of might makes right. Mm-hmm. And so you can use whatever means you want to achieve the end. So you can lie, you can deceive, you can say things like, hey, we're not going to do any shootings during this period of hours, but it won't matter because it's a Machiavellian ethic. Mm-hmm. Then you have in the Ukraine a deontological ethic, which would be a Kantian duty-based ethic. From their vantage point, we have a duty to them to protect them because they see themselves as part of the West. And so Kant believed, in this duty-based ethic. And then in the West, we're exercising a utilitarian ethic as it relates to no-fly zones, and we're weighing out the consequences. So there's this consequentialism of a Jeremy Bentham or a John Stuart Mill. So what's really interesting is we're in the middle of some kind of a clash of ethics, and then you can have a little bit of a combinational perspective where you could be a duty-based person, but you're utilizing a little bit of utilitarian math here. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is that presupposes we know the future versus doing what we do know. Like the future is a reality not yet here. All we can do is act on what we know is right in front of us. Do we have a duty to help? And so I found myself interested because if we're not aware that Putin is a Machiavellian and he's driven by that worldview, then we're not getting the message. Like, in other words, when I hear Ukrainians say, we already began World War III, that's where my mindset goes, that's exactly right. Because we already know what Putin's going to do because he already wants Poland. He already wants other places. So in a utilitarian Western world, we're going to sit here and we're going to wait until we see the destruction being so bad that we have to act. And so anyway, I don't know if that's helpful at all, but I felt like in light of where we are, I just thought we listen to so much news. I thought maybe I could just give a little observation on some of my ethical considerations as it relates to the moral philosophies driving these different decisions without people even knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Putin's the worst person in Russian history to Vladimir Putin was Mikhail Gorbachev, because he basically brought down the great empire of the Soviet Union. The two greatest people in Putin's mind are Tsar Nicholas II and Stalin. So,
yep.
I mean, when you think that somebody thinks Stalin was a great guy, mm-hmm. that's about as scary as it gets, because, Stalin ranks right up there with Hitler, with some of the monstrous dictators in history. So,
absolutely.
What's fascinating, though, I was listening to this congressman today, and he's a former Air Force pilot, and he was talking about having a friend who was a pilot with him who was Ukrainian, who was born in the Ukraine and, immigrated as a kid, whatever, to the U.S., and then joined the forces, became a pilot, and so forth. And they were talking recently, this is right before the invasion, and he asked his friend, what do you think? You think there's going to be an invasion? And the Ukrainian guy said, I don't know. I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter because Ukrainians, Russians, it's kind of all the same thing. The Ukrainians will probably just fold right back into Russia because that's happened historically. But he said that the surprise element in all of it is Zelensky. Nobody expected Zelensky to rise to the occasion and to become a hero. So the attitude of the whole country just fell in behind him. It's like, no, we're not Russians. We're Ukrainians, and we're going to fight.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought, wow,
you see the need for good leaders, right?
Yeah, man, this is all so fascinating, the whole story. And, talking about the no-fly zone and all of that, the no-fly zone is essentially, I mean, and Putin's saying it, and it is somewhat true. It is a declaration of war because we're saying if you fly over this area, we will shoot down your plane. His whole thing is if anybody but the Ukrainians shoots down our planes, that's war. So it's a rock and a hard place for sure. I think it's not as simple as sometimes it seems like. It is complicated.
Isn't it amazing though to think of? I mean, how many people's lives are being affected by one person's power grab?
Yeah, it is
like gas prices. You could go into so many things that are being affected by just one person. So that's where it's hard.
Yeah.
I get that statement you just said, but I'm like, he doesn't play by any kind of rules.
No rules.
But he expects everybody else to, or he'll punish you.
Yeah. No, I just saw,
it really annoys me.
Yeah, and I just saw a video taken from somebody who was just in Ukraine, walking the streets of a Ukrainian village and just looking at the rubble that were the homes of the community, just blown to bits, and you think, wow, that this guy thinks, but again, Stalin's his hero, so it's understandable. He thinks that you just go in and kill anybody that you can just to get your way. This is, man, it's a dark, dark time, but thank God we can pray. And I've got a video here that I haven't been able to look at because I just got it. And it is an interview with George Markey, who's been in the Ukraine for 30 years, moved there as a teenager, went to school, went to university, and has now been pastoring there for, some 15 years after he grew up and took over the church that his dad pastored. So it'll be interesting to get a firsthand account from George.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. And we still have the emergency relief fund going on?
We absolutely have the emergency relief fund, yes, at give or giving.cccm.com. We're also trying to get up on calvarychapel.com and the global network. We're getting some information up there too. So all of it is going to the same place. John Chubik, our missions pastor, and Josh Ersdick, our high school pastor, landed in Budapest today. So they're boots on the ground now. Phil Metzger, those guys, I think, have returned home. So maybe even tomorrow we would get an update with Phil that would air on Monday because he was literally in Ukraine driving a Red Cross van and taking supplies, to wounded people and taking people out of the country, helping them get out. So we can get a firsthand update from Phil.
So Phil's going to join us tomorrow?
Well,
I think it's like 1 a.m. over there, isn't it?
No, I think he's back.
Oh, he's back? Really?
I think he's
back. Okay.
Yeah, but I
didn't
could
know
be wrong.
Okay, because I know we recorded here at the radio station, we recorded an interview with him on Monday, I think it was, and we were going to play it this weekend here on.
Okay, yeah. Well, I know Nick Cady. He was with Nick Cady. I know Nick has come home, so I'm just thinking Phil might have too.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go to the phones after we come back from our break because it is that time. 888-564-6173 for you to get in on the conversation that we're having today. Ask your questions about the Bible, the Christian. He just got he took my shot again. Sorry, I'm back. 888-564-6173, the number to call. And we're here till 4 p.m. Pacific time. What do you want to talk about? Give us a call. 888-564-6173. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. Hang on. Pastor's Perspective is back. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. My name is Brian Perez, joined in the studio by Brian Brodersen, the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. You also hear him on the Back to Basics radio program on many of these same radio stations. And on the Bobby Cam, we've got author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. He's also the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, which meets on Sundays at 4 p.m. 4 p.m. so that Bobby can sleep in on Sunday mornings because he doesn't like to use an alarm, so he sleeps in as late as he wants. Or maybe he just, after he wakes up, he sends a text message to everybody at his church and says, okay, we'll start in an hour. Is that how it works, Bobby? Or do you force yourself to wake up on Sundays?
Yeah, hey, now it doesn't matter, right? But we actually meet at 5 p.m. and it's
so that you can sleep.
So it gives me an extra hour to sleep.
Perfect.
So
yes. All right, 888-564-6173. Let's begin this segment with Ezekiel in Georgia after Pastor Brian says this.
I was telling Brian before, that I got up about 6 and I just thought, Bobby's probably still asleep. It's 9. So I just prayed for you for a little while, that you'd have some energy, be able to get out of bed, get about your day. So it's good to see that you made it. Yeah. My prayers were answered.
Okay. Well, hey, I got up at 6:30 a.m. today. I did
no way. Good. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Good for you.
All right.
All right, Ezekiel, what did you want to know today?
Greetings to you all, pastors. Good to hear you all.
Thank you.
I'm always excited to be on the show and always go home blessed than I came.
That's great.
To you, the great doctor. I enjoy Pastor Brodersen's Back to Basics every day. Please give him a break. Don't want him out. I need him tonight, please. Please, I have 2 questions, if you would. The first one is, what is the origin of race? Black, white, brown? I mean, where did all of that start? I tried to read in the Old Testament, but I couldn't put my finger on any of that, if you can help me with.
Sure, and what's your other question?
Why did God allow slavery from the beginning in the Old Testament? Why did God not just come with equality that everyone was equal? Why did, because I know Abraham had slaves and others, but why were some people, over others?
Right.
That's what I'm trying to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and I think for the second, I'm going to answer the second one, Ezekiel, and then Bobby can tackle the first one. When we look at the Old Testament, what we see, we have to remember in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, which is in the very early days of human history, we don't know how long Adam and Eve had, lived in the garden and in harmony with the Lord. But very, very early on, sin entered into the world. They fell into sin. They chose to obey the devil, and in doing so, or they chose to disobey God, and in doing so, they obeyed the devil, and they submitted themselves to his authority, basically. And then the human race begins. History begins with their children, and we have the record of 2 of their children. 3 if you include Seth later, but we have Cain and Abel. And so you find in Cain and Abel, of course, you find the first murder. Cain murders his brother Abel. And sin just takes root in the heart of humanity, and it expands out from there. And so slavery of whatever form is going to develop out of this sinful state of humanity. So when God deals with, individuals like Abram, for example. He calls him from Ur of the Chaldees, and he calls him to go into this new land. God's not going to necessarily mess with the cultural structures that exist. Abraham had servants. His servant was like his son, Eliezer, his servant. He said, I don't have an heir. I only have Eliezer. So Abraham's intention was to give all of his wealth to his servant. So I think the relationship, we often look at slavery from the lens of American slavery, or sometimes what's happened in an African context or a European context. But I think to some degree in the Old Testament, we have to see that it was a bit different. So anyway, God's intention as time goes on, and then we have Moses comes, and the law of Moses comes, and the Israelites are underneath this law. God does not, it's not a perfect system. God is not trying to develop a perfect system. He's basically just trying to prevent the people from self-destructing and trying to help them live fairly normal, good lives until he can bring the Redeemer into the world. So the Old Testament is a temporary measure. It was never intended to be a perfect system. And so God, again, he allows the culture to remain intact. And then when we come to the New Testament, even in the New Testament, there isn't a big push against slavery because that was just one of many issues that were universal at the time. The church had no power to change society or the culture from the top down, but God would build into the Christian gospel a message that would blow slavery up from the inside. And that was love your neighbor, love your brother, love as Jesus loved. And because God would give people a new heart and the ability to do that, that would eventually bring the demise of slavery. So it was early on in the history of the church in the 4th, 5th centuries where leadership in the church, which by that time gained some cultural clout, they began to push hard against the institution of slavery. We know in the United States that institution did not end till the late 1800s, and we know it was about 100 years earlier in Britain. So, again, I did a teaching on this. If you want to go to backtobasicsradio.com, I did a teaching in Colossians, and I think it's called The Bible, Christianity, and Slavery. And I went into a ton of detail on a lot of these things. So that might be a little more information if you would like to go there.
Bobby, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was a great answer, Brian. I would add a couple caveats as it relates to slavery that we have this tendency to think of very much in a silo, like why did slavery exist within Judaism or Christianity? And I think that we need to recognize that this was going on within other cultures surrounding Israel as well. And the way that the slaves were treated was inhumane. And so while slavery was, God meets us where we are to bring us to where he's at, right? And so you can envision slavery is kind of in place, polytheism is in place, polygamy is in place, and God's going to teach that he's the one true God, and that monogamy, and that there is no slave or free, and the gospel is going to really bring things to bear, as Brian said. But one of the things the Bible is very clear about is while there is slavery being permitted, again, don't think of it like Brian said in the antebellum South. While slavery is being permitted, there is restrictions to make sure that the slave is properly treated. And it's also important to see this more like indentured servanthood. So it was a way of getting out of debt. So you can picture people were suffering from debt, so they needed to get out of debt. And so what they would do is they would offer their services, and they would be bound to somebody in a master-servant relationship. But that doesn't mean that the master biblically had the right to beat the servant. And not only that, there were these loopholes for, after 7 years of service, for example, that the slave could be freed. But then it was like if the slave wants to stay because he realizes that there's nowhere else to go, then he can commit himself to the master. Now, slave master comes very loaded in our terminology, but you have to understand there were people who actually loved the relationship because they were cared for, they were housed, they were fed, they were provided for, they were the Judeo lifestyle was modeled before them, and so they willingly gave themselves into that. So all that said, the Bible does not tolerate being abusive. as it relate. And Brian, before I go off, because I do think this is a topic that is of interest.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you would want to say or on this topic?
Well, yeah, and like you said, Bobby, it's important to realize that the whole world. Well, it's important to realize, number one, the whole world is in rebellion to God and doing things their way and not His. And so this is a universal situation. Even to this day, slavery is, you can find it everywhere in the world today, for the most part, in one shape or another. The second thing is what God did is He took the brutality out of it, even in the Old Testament. So there were very strict laws in the Old Testament about how you could and couldn't treat your slave. So you had to basically be kind to them and gracious, and you had to take care of them. And then, like I said, when you come to the New Testament, the gospel itself is like the built-in self-destruct of slavery, because it blows it up. When Paul writes to Philemon, and he talks about this Onesimus who was a slave of Philemon, and he had actually run away, and now Paul's sending him back. But he says to Philemon, he says basically, he went away as a slave, but he's coming back as a brother. So now the whole relationship has changed. And so this is going to begin to permeate the entire, the Christian culture, and then out from the Christian culture.
That is so good.
Yeah, and then the deeds. Brian, did you want to say?
I just wanted to say, I think what he just said was great. That built-in self-destruct for slavery. Imagine all the things love can do. That's great. Go ahead, Bobby.
Exactly. Well, it not only was it built in to properly treat the slaves that you had, but God basically said, I'm going to deal with you if you mistreat them.
Yes.
So, God expected that. And then when you think about this whole idea that we are slaves of Christ, doulos of Christ.
Yeah.
And God is our master. So like Bill and his wife, was it Yvette or Yvonne Bright, had put on the epitaph, Yvonne, on the epitaph of their tombstones, slaves of Christ, doulos of Christ. And, biblically, God is our master and we are slaves. But when you think about being a slave, it's not like you got to unpack it from all of the negative language. Like, in other words, he's such a good master. And what is a slave? It's a servant. We're servants of a good master who wants the best for us. And that same, in the same way that Christ came to serve, that was the way that the master was to be with his servants, to serve, to care, to help them to dig out of debt so that they could get out of that bind that they were in.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, antebellum slavery, the slavery that was ended with the Civil War, that was, and it was unfortunately something that Christians engaged in, enslaving others, and in some cases not treating them very well. And that, of course, would just be antithetical to everything that the gospel says. So those who were doing that were not doing it because the Bible said, hey, get a slave. Everybody should have a slave. And if they mess up, beat them. People act like that, like there's a biblical command to have a slave and to brutalize them. There's no such thing. These people were in sin who were behaving this way. They were compromising their own faith. They were contradicting the scriptures and what the scriptures had to say. So there's no biblical justification for that kind of behavior. But Bobby,
William Wilberforce, what an example, right?
Yeah.
Like with the whole way that slavery, to talk about how the gospel demolishes it.
Yeah.
That statement is alive in William Wilberforce in England, pulling down that whole structure.
Yeah. But the crazy thing was it took him about 40 years to actually do it, and shortly after he succeeded, he died. It was like he fought, he fought this tremendous fight. But Bobby, what about the racial diversity among human beings?
Where did it start?
Yeah.
Where did that start?
Here's a much more pithy answer so we can get on to some of the other callers. But biblically speaking, there's only one race, and it's the human race. So technically, we don't have racial differences. We have ethnic differences. So there's one human race with a variety of ethnicities that show up in different languages, culture, skin color. And obviously, what you have taken place is in a post-flood world, Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the nations are going to start flowing from them. After the Tower of Babel, when they're still trying to hang out and stay together, God spreads them out, and people start traveling and dispersing. And these different ethnicities start to come on the scene as God disperses them.
Ezekiel, thank you so much for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Real quick, let me give you again the title of Pastor Brian Brodersen's message, the one he gave at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in 2020. But I forget it. I think it's The Bible, Christianity, and Slavery, right? Yep, I had it up on my screen. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
there it is.
It's from the Colossians series.
Yeah. So check that out at backtobasicsradio.com if you want to hear audio. If you want to watch the video from that Sunday morning, you can go to the Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa website, cccm.com. Just do a search for Bible, Christianity, and Slavery. All right, 888-564-6173. Let's talk to Sophia in Canada. How can we help you, Sophia?
Oh, hi, everybody. I like you guys' hair. It's full and fluffy.
Fluffy hair. You must be well. Yeah, you're listening in Canada, so I guess you're watching online.
It's not like that. It goes in. It's a male pattern baldness, and I'm trying to perk him up.
Well, that's kind to try to perk him up. That's good.
Yes, indeed. How can we help you today?
I have a question. I'm going to read. I write it out, so I'm going to read it. I'm going to do it slowly so you guys can understand. I have an accent. In the Old Testament, you have the name Jehovah and I Am, which is Jesus in the New Testament. Christians use Jesus and Jehovah names interchangeably. The question is, who is who? Who is the Father and who is the Son? Well, what are their names?
All right. Brian, you could understand Sophia's Canadian accent there?
Yeah, so the name of, Yahweh is a better way to pronounce the name of God probably than Jehovah. Although some Bibles, I was reading the NASB the other day, and it was Jehovah was the way they translated it. But I think Yahweh is the better way. And so Yahweh is God's name. It means the one. It means the one who is and was and is to come. It's like means the eternal one or the ever present one. But Jesus or Yeshua is just that name with salvation added onto it. So Yahweh is salvation is what the name Jesus means. So the name is the same for the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus was given an earthly name that reflected what God was doing through him, which was saving the world.
Bobby?
Just out of curiosity, Sophia, by any chance, are you a Jehovah's Witness?
I used to be, but not anymore.
Okay.
Well, good.
Okay.
And
yeah, that's good news.
And like I said, I was talking to somebody on Sunday who had also grown up in Kingdom Hall, and I was just thinking as we were talking about even the emphasis of the Kingdom Hall on Jehovah. I mean, they are Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what they're known as. It's a mispronunciation of the name of God. Somebody at some point, I don't know exactly who it was, but it was quite some time ago, they decided, because you only have, Bobby, you can explain this better than me, but you only have, in Hebrew, you only have consonants. You don't have vowels. You have markings that make the vowel sounds. So when you read the Hebrew script and you come to the name of God, it's just what we would say like YHWH or YHVH, Yahweh or Yahweh. And so somebody had the idea to take the vowels from another Hebrew title for God, Adonai, and to stick them into Yahweh, which came out Yehovah, Yehovah. So, but there was no basis for really doing that. It was just somebody just came up with the idea to do it, and for some people it stuck. Right, Bobby?
That's it.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly right. I think that you're going to be able to, if as a person who is a Jehovah's Witness, Sophia, and if you're no longer one, I guess my question is you said you're no longer one. Have you become a Christian though?
Yes, I'm a Christian for many years now, but I still use the name Jehovah because when I was a teenager, that's the time I was introduced to them, and so it's embedded in my head. When you're younger, things that's introduced to you, it's hard to get rid of.
Mm-hmm. And and it's okay. It's not bad to use the name. Like I said, the New American Standard Version of the Bible uses that, or at least the one prior to the newest translation. So it's not a bad thing. It's just not really accurate.
All right, Sophia, great hearing from you again today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's now come back to California, talk to Arnie. What's up, Arnie?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing great, thanks.
Great. Hey, my question is in Revelation chapter 3, and it's the second verse, and it's the second part of that verse. I know that the very first part says, "Wake up, straighten what little remains, for even what is left is almost dead." I find that your actions do not meet the requirements of God. I just wondered if you guys could, actually it's like a two-part. I just was wondering if you could tell me what the requirements were, and also if you think that's where the church is now. I'm going to hang up, and I'll hear you guys over the radio.
All right, Bobby, what would you say to Arnie?
Well, this is the angel speaking to the church leader in Sardis. And the verse before gives us an indication of where their works are incomplete. I know your works, you have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. So by not meeting the requirement, it's not that they have to do a bunch of requirements like as if they're under the law. They have some people in that congregation who are living pharisaical, merely in pretense. It's an outward show. But while they might be fooling other people, God's saying, I'm not fooled. And isn't that interesting? They have a reputation for being alive, for being charismatic, yet God is not fooled. And so there can be pastors you listen to or churches you go to, and it can just seem like there's a lot of hype, but it could all be a show. And on the inside, God knows what's going on. And he says, you're dead. And so what's the invitation? Wake up, strengthen what remains and is about to die. I think there's a couple ways that one could look at it. One might say, you know what? Some of you are living like Pharisees. You've never really repented. You're just putting on a show, and you're about to blaspheme the Spirit, and you're not going to have any more opportunities because you know what the right thing to do is. Or another option could be that you need to wake up and deal with this. Like, in other words, you're true converts here, but you're missing the point. You're putting on a show, and judgment's coming your way. But what we can also know is in verse 4, there's still people in that church who have not soiled their garments. In other words, they walk upright. And so this is a mixed congregation. There's people who are really walking alive and are alive. There's people who are pretending to be alive and are not. And the one requirement is the only requirement, and that is to believe in the Lord Jesus.
So one of the things Arnie said was he was asking, is this the state of the church today? But I guess what you're saying is it's not the state of the whole church. There are still some within the church who have not soiled their garments, so to speak. Bobby?
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there's people in the church today that while there's a lot of people that have left the church in COVID, for example, we can just take heart that the true church is not dying, that it might be being pruned, but look at all the worship leaders that are taken off and leaving the faith. I mean, they put on a good show for a long time, but they're checking out. Thankfully, that's not the case for all worship leaders.
Right.
There's worship leaders that are white hot and they're going to stay that way. Well, it's the same way as it relates to Christians within the church.
Yeah. Brian?
Goodbye.
Thank you for coming in today, Pastor Brian.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, this was fun. It was great. Bobby and I don't get to do it too often, just him and I. So today was good, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
Yes, we will. Same bat time, same bat channel. Are we allowed to say that, or is that trademarked? I hope not. Hopefully that didn't cost us a whole bunch of money.
Adam West died a while back.
That's true.
We're probably fine.
All right, so we will be here tomorrow. It's Thursday tomorrow, so we'll be here from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. If we didn't get to your call today, so sorry. Call us tomorrow. For Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway, I'm Brian Perez. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.